It started with a whisper, a promise of healing for young men in the South African Defense Force. They were told there was a treatment, a way to correct what the state called an abnormality. Officers insisted it was help, not punishment, a medical procedure to make them normal. The promise was a lie, wrapped in the sterile white of a doctor's coat. Those who accepted or were forced believed they were heading to a hospital. They imagined clean wards and gentle recovery. Instead, they found a trap, a labyrinth of medical terror. The treatment was not to heal but to break. It was an experiment born from prejudice, executed with chilling precision. The hope they carried curdled into dread. In the military truck, silence reigned, each man an island of anxiety. They were just boys, conscripted to fight for a regime that now saw them as a sickness. The promise preyed on their fear of being different in a society demanding conformity. Their destination was a place scrubbed from official maps, where medical ethics were inverted. The promise of a cure was the key to a hidden world, where science and prejudice merged into a monstrous form. These young soldiers were about to become subjects of a horrifying experiment, seen not as people to be healed, but as problems to be erased. In apartheid South Africa, every white male was conscripted into the military. For most, it was a dreaded duty. For some, it was a nightmare. The military's internal police watched for anyone who didn't fit the ideal. Chaplains and psychologists became informants, not comforters. Fear lived in the barracks. One wrong word or glance could bring suspicion. The military hunted homosexuals, seen as threats to security and morality. Once suspected, a soldier was isolated, interrogated, and shamed. Friends turned away, fearing guilt by association. Psychologists promised lighter duties for confessions, a cruel game to break spirits. Soldiers learned to hide, to bury their true selves. The army became a place where betrayal could come from anyone. Doctors and chaplains became interrogators. For gay conscripts, the Defense Force was a prison built from fear. The destination was Ward 22 at one military hospital. On paper, a psychiatric unit, in reality, the heart of the Aversion Project. Here, the goal was to cure homosexuality by any means. The ward was isolated, its records buried in secrecy. Once transferred, a soldier disappeared from the world. Inside, the atmosphere was cold and suffocating. Patients lost their uniforms, belongings, and names, reduced to numbers. Days blurred into cycles of observation, medication, and interrogative therapy. Every action was recorded, every word scrutinized. They were told they were sick, that only submission would bring freedom. Letters were censored, protests met with sedation. The soldiers were trapped, cut off from families and hope. Science was twisted into a weapon and cruelty was justified as treatment. Ward 22 was where the Aversion Project became a living nightmare. The normal rules of medicine and decency no longer applied. This was the point of no return. Every nightmare has its monster. Ward 22's was Dr. Aubrey Levin. As chief psychiatrist, he was seen as a pioneer by the military, but to his patients, he was the architect of their agony. Levin believed homosexuality was a disease to be cured, justifying acts of profound cruelty. He designed the Aversion Project, overseeing experiments in psychological torture. To him, the men were not people, but case studies. He walked the halls with detached curiosity, documenting pain as data. In his mind, he was healing, not torturing. His methods twisted behavioral psychology, using pain to recondition desire. He pushed aversion therapy to its most extreme, inhumane limits. Empathy was absent. Screams and tears were just evidence of progress. Under Levin, Ward 22 became his private laboratory, free from oversight. He held absolute power, deciding who was cured and who needed more drastic intervention. His name became a whisper of terror among survivors. Dr. Aubrey Levin's legacy is forever linked to the systematic breaking of young lives. In the sterile rooms of Ward 22, he played God with devastating consequences. At the core of Levin's treatment was the shock room, a windowless chamber with a bed fitted with restraints. Soldiers were strapped down, electrodes attached, and forced to view images of men. At any sign of arousal, or sometimes at random, a switch was flipped. Agonizing electricity surged through their bodies. The pain was indescribable. Muscles convulsed, screams filled the room. The process repeated, forging a link between desire and unbearable pain. It was classical conditioning perverted into torture. The psychological damage was worse than the physical. Soldiers were made to feel broken, inhuman. After each session they were left shaking, traumatized, dreading the next. These sessions were routine, repeated over weeks and months. Some endured dozens, learning to fake disgust just to make it stop. The shock room was designed to break their will and shatter their sense of self. It was a place where a part of them died, their screams absorbed by soundproofed walls. The fear of the next session became a constant shadow. The shock room was the heart of the Aversion Project's cruelty. When shocks failed, Dr. Levin turned to drugs. Soldiers were injected with sedatives and nausea-inducing chemicals, often without consent. Forced to view images again, desire became linked to sickness and revulsion. This was chemical castration at its crudest. Drugs subdued those who resisted, leaving them in a fog of confusion. Minds dulled, bodies betrayed, they became easy to control. The long-term effects were devastating, lasting health problems and deep psychological scars. The sense of betrayal was total. They could trust nothing, not even their own bodies. The chemical assault was a silent, creeping torture. It didn't have the drama of the shock room, but it destroyed from the inside out. The silence of the drugged ward was the sound of souls being quietly dismantled. For those not cured by shocks or drugs, Dr. Levin had a final solution. He diagnosed some as transsexuals, often without consent or proper evaluation. This led to forced gender reassignment surgeries, performed by military doctors. The procedures were crude, often resulting in mutilation. Young men were castrated, given new names and hormones, and cast out of the military. Their identities were erased, their lives destroyed. They were not trans women, but gay men punished by surgical violence. The state had unmade them, leaving them as living ghosts. As many as 900 forced surgeries were performed, each one a life shattered, a testament to the project's ultimate cruelty. The Aversion Project ended with the surgical destruction of human beings. With apartheid's end, the Aversion Project's secrets began to surface. Survivors, broken but not silenced, came forward with stories of the ward, the doctor, the shocks, and the drugs. For years their accounts were met with denial and disbelief, but they persisted, forming support groups, seeking legal help, and speaking to journalists. They wanted recognition, an apology, and the world to know what was done in the name of hate. The psychological scars were deep: depression, PTSD, and a profound distrust of authority. Their ability to love and trust had been systematically destroyed. Dr. Levin eventually left South Africa for Canada, where his past caught up with him. Only through survivors' courage and journalists' work did the truth come to light. The whispers from the wreckage became a confirmed chapter in the history of medical torture. The world was finally forced to listen. The Aversion Project was no longer a rumor, but a documented atrocity. The full truth of the Aversion Project may never be known. Records were destroyed and many perpetrators took their secrets to the grave. The number of victims is lost in the military's black hole. Survivors spoke, but many never had the chance. Some disappeared, living in shadows, too broken to come forward. The Aversion Project stands as a chilling monument to the horrors unleashed by prejudice and power. Its pain echoes through the lives of survivors and the families of the lost. The deepest silence is for those who never returned, the young men who vanished into the darkness, never to speak again.